Well, welcome back to part 3 of my interview with Immortals CEO Noah Whinston. Talking about Overwatch now. We run a little time on the studio here, running a little out of time, so let's just dive in. What is your take on the Overwatch League? Because I have seen nothing but all the owners like hyping this stuff up. I feel like nobody really knows what's happening. It's just an interesting place. So I'm going to force you to talk about it a little bit here.
Okay. I mean, to start, I'd say that almost everything out there on like price of slots and number of slots is based on almost completely nothing. It is based on like one person saying, I think slots will cost this much, and someone else interpreting that as they will cost this much, and kind of going down the rabbit hole from there. So a lot of the details are still TBD, right? Like, this is not in a lot of the same way that we're waiting on some of the details from Riot, right? Like, Blizzard and Activision are going to try and get this right, not get it fast. Like, I would much rather... I mean,
you say that, but they're supposed to launch it in Q3 of this year, right? Like, that's not
that's an aggressive timeline, for sure, right? But, like, I certainly am not going to be the saddest person in the world if Blizzard is like, hey, we need to push back by a bit because we want to get this right, not fast.
Right.
Like, I think everyone who's freaking out over Overwatch League needs to calm down a little bit. Like, it'll happen when it happens, and presumably when it happens, when Blizzard and Activision decide that they're ready to pull the trigger on it, it'll be because they're ready and they're structured and they're organized. I
mean, but what makes you feel like that's what's going to happen? I ask again only because we're hearing a Q3 timeline. I just did a video recently with Emily Rand where we're just like, this thing is supposed to be like as soon as 3 months from now, and I mean,
to be fair, that Q3 timeline came from like BlizzCon. Right?
No, I think that, I feel like originally it said Q2, and I feel like now they're saying maybe now second half of the year, so hopefully a little bit longer. But I worry about how little information is out there. And I'm surprised that the owners, yourself included, are not more concerned about that.
I mean, from our perspective, nobody has more of an incentive to make sure this succeeds than Blizzard and Activision. Right? Like, as much as we're freaking out
surely
about
they should be talking with you guys and getting feedback and making sure that it's all set up, and like, you guys should be building this together, right? Certainly that's what you all wanted to do with Riot.
Well, that's partially what we wanted to do with Riot, but I mean, realistically with Riot, we're already there, right? For Blizzard and Activision, they don't have 5 years of experience working with these teams. Riot Games, like, even before LCS was franchise, they've been working with Andy from TSM and Jack from C9 for forever, right? Yeah. Steve, George, Team Liquid, and CLG, these are people that they know really well and they can work with. Blizzard's kind of coming into this without that track record of cooperation, right? So it's not surprising to me that they're trying to figure out on their end what they want before they're saying, okay, now let's talk to people, now let's understand what the full structure is in the public eye, and now let's understand which teams are going to be part of building this long-term with us. But look, like, Blizzard and Activision's a very successful company. They're massive. They don't get to be massive and successful by completely squandering opportunities all the time. So, like, given that they have more of an incentive to make it work than I do as a team owner, I'm going to kind of trust them to set up their thing and then bring me in, and if I see issues with it, I'll tell them. But, like, that's kind of my choice too, right? Like, if I see their structure for Overwatch League and it's bad, I'm under no obligation to participate in it.
Yeah, I know. I just feel like everybody in this industry probably really wants Overwatch League to succeed. I certainly do. I'm sure all the owners do as well. It's to everyone's benefit. I just am a little worried about this stuff. Given that you say that the team numbers that we heard were kind of, you somewhat dismissed that report, I'm curious, and also saying that so much other stuff is TBD. I'm curious if you dismissed the $100 million Morgan Stanley report that came out. I mean, because I have not seen anybody come out against that.
I mean, honestly, the Morgan Stanley report, as much as people have held that up as like awful and inaccurate, like, doesn't make crazy assumptions off of revenue that could be generated from the league. But regardless, like, it doesn't matter what Morgan Stanley says, because Morgan Stanley's not working with any more information here than we are, right? Like,
so then, but I mean, that whole report is built on information and data and assumptions, and if you are so readily willing to dismiss like the rumors that are out there, then certainly you also have to dismiss a report.
Yeah,
like that, right?
Absolutely. Like, I fully dismiss the idea that like it's going to generate $100 million in revenue in the Overwatch League based on like a series of many assumptions made by the analysts that put that report together, including number of slots, price of slots, revenue generated. Like, there were a lot of assumptions in there.
Yeah.
Maybe they're all right. I doubt they'll all be right. I'm certainly not penciling in $100 million of revenue in my balance sheets right now because I think that that's what it's going to be. I just think that, like, this speculation is actually useless, right? Like, we can try and predict what these prices are going to be. We can try and predict what the revenue is going to be. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, us saying it's going to be 10 million versus 15 million versus 2 million for a slot has no bearing on what the final price of a slot is. Us saying it's going to generate 100 million versus 200 million versus 20 million in revenue has no bearing on the actual amount of revenue it's going to generate. This is just kind of the, like, Chicken Little act that esports likes to pull every once in a while, where everyone feels like they have a ton of information when realistically, like, those things are getting decided by people as we speak. They're not like the people that are doing this. Again, nobody has more of an incentive to make these things right than the people that are doing it.
But do you not think that the C9 investment that came in recently was at least, like, they had to have factored some sort of Overwatch stuff into the valuation for this?
Yeah, of course you factor it.
And so that's my point, right, is like, you have to, like, the speculation is useless and yet somehow necessary because there are going to be investments and market forces and all this stuff that are driven by...
And it was part of our recent investment round too, right? Like, Overwatch League has been on the horizon for a while, but the realistic thing to consider here is, right, like, if in the same way that, like, treating Riot Games' permanent partnership like it is the end goal of an esports organization is ridiculous, like, treating Overwatch League like it's the end goal of an esports organization is ridiculous. If your only plan for growing an esports organization is, well, I'm going to get into Overwatch League, you shouldn't be running an esports organization, right? If the only thing you have to sell investors on is, well, maybe I'll be in the Overwatch League, like, you are failing as a head of your organization.
Sure.
Like, you need to be able to create value yourself. And maybe you can accentuate that value with partnerships with publishers, but, like, being in Overwatch League isn't going to teach you how to sell sponsorships. Being in Overwatch League isn't going to teach you how to reach your fan base or create content or build competitive teams.
What about the rumor, the idea that there are going to be traditional sports owners that come in and their first entrance might not be, you know, with, like, taking a stake in an existing team. They might go straight to Overwatch League, you know, do not pass go, do not collect $200, and just suddenly have a stake there. You're saying that if that's the only thing you're betting on, that could be maybe not a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think traditional sports teams that enter the ecosystem and see Overwatch League as their one and only entrance into esports are going to be left pretty severely disappointed, right? And the ones that expect it to be just as easy to kind of expand their current sports operations into esports without really hiring people with authentic knowledge and expecting that to work, I think they're going to be disappointed too. But I just want to make sure that nobody watching this interview thinks that Overwatch League is some sort of free ride, right? Like, there's no league on earth that is going to say, hey, pay this franchise fee and you make more money than that in year one just by being here.
A couple minutes left here. Do you have any concerns that Blizzard Activision will perhaps find, you know, like the Mark Cubans of the world to be more attractive than the established esports organizations? Is there a chance that perhaps these guys decide, you know, rather than a Cloud9, Immortals, a TSM, like, they'd much rather work with, you know, any of these other, like, Yankees? Right?
Yeah, it's certainly possible. I'd say that if that happens, that's a failure on our end as endemic organizations, because ultimately to justify our seat at the table, we have to prove our value, right? If we legitimately can't...
That assumes that Blizzard Activision is viewing your value accurately, right?
Well, they view our value as however they want to view their value within their value system, right? Like,
I guess so, but
it's not up to us to determine that.
My feeling is you guys, like TSM, great esports organization, have been around for a long time, have this established fan base, certainly seem to know how to run a successful operation, and sort of dismissing that for a sports owner who might not know. I mean, the esports is paved with the corpses of investments of people from outside esports getting in, trying to make something they don't understand about. You know, like, I would hate to see something like that too.
And in conversations we've had with Blizzard and in communications that Blizzard has had both publicly and privately, we're not super concerned about, like, a really warped worldview over there. Right?
Okay.
Like, I think they understand well the value of endemic organizations when it comes to the knowledge and existing experience and stability that they provide. I think they also correctly see the value in getting more non-endemic investors involved and using that as a way to create the Overwatch League as kind of one of those centralized points of combined value within esports that make selling broadcast rights and selling sponsorships easier. So,
and hearing that makes me feel more comfortable again. I feel like the industry is in a really weird place, and I feel like if there was more like of an established esports community around Overwatch, those people would be freaking out too, because there's just been so little information. You certainly dismiss it as like, oh, they're just figuring it out, right? But again, like this thing is coming sometime this year, and we just have no knowledge.
I don't blame people for being worried. I guess what I'd just say is, it sounds a little callous to say this, right? But like, frankly, within esports, we don't have a lot of good test cases of like testing things to see if they work.
Yeah.
Right? Like most games have followed down one path or another, either the Riot path or the like Valve path. Being very centralized or very decentralized. And, you know, like maybe Blizzard takes a really big gamble on this one, right? Maybe they do something completely unlike every other publisher does, and maybe it completely blows up, right? Like that's a possibility.
Yeah.
And if it does, then we're going to have a lot more information about what makes a successful esports ecosystem.
Yeah.
I don't, you know, maybe I'm thinking too long term on this one, right? But like, you know, maybe in 10 years, a failure of a Blizzard Overwatch League allows a much better system to be set up for the next big game.
Yeah.
Or maybe the success of a Blizzard Overwatch League sets a really good precedent for what publishers should be doing with teams in order to create really cooperative and mutually beneficial relationships.
Yeah. I do wish that there was just one system that was kind of like this, that we could look back on, some sort of gaming series or like a champion,
this
like
is
a championship
nothing like
gaming
CGS.
Series. I mean,
this is nothing like CGS.
Okay, good. I mean, but I mean, in the same way, you're saying, hope, you know, God forbid, but you know, a failure of an Overwatch League could 10 years from now set us up for success.
Legitimately, look at what happened in the aftermath of CGS. Like, yes, CGS was an awful failure that almost single-handedly destroyed the Counter-Strike scene.
Right.
And yet, every year after CGS, whenever anything even approaches that kind of model, everyone's like, oh my God, this is like CGS. We better not do this because CGS blew up.
Except for Blizzard.
Which, no, this is nothing like CGS.
Yeah, okay, fair.
They're selling the spots to outside parties. They're not owning the teams.
Okay. I get that. I just, more and more, I think people are concerned about this, and I worry about Overwatch League and where we're headed.
You got to take a longer view of the history here, right? Like, do you know how many football leagues and basketball leagues went under before we ended up at the NBA and the NFL?
Sure, like, I would not have wanted to invest in any of those, though.
I mean, investment means risk, right? Yeah. Like, if you invest in something and there's no risk, you're not supposed to make money on it.
Yeah, that's what I told myself at the blackjack table this last weekend in Vegas. and I did not come out on top there either.
Yeah, but, you know, you had some fun, right? And, like, any investor, I'll reiterate this for the first time in this. Well, I think the second time in this section and the third time overall in this interview, like any investor, any team owner that thinks something is like this guaranteed one-way ticket to payday is deluding themselves, right? Like no investment comes without risk. If you are,
I'm sure there's some investors out there that you need to go talk to and tell this to.
I mean, hopefully you deliver on the reach that you say Yahoo has and get in front of them.
It's huge. Well, anyway, thank you so much for coming in and sitting down with us in the studio today. Hope you had a good time. I certainly did.
I did.
Yeah.
Thanks, Travis.
Anything you want to plug?
Guess I just want to say thank you to all of the Immortals fans out there. Your support, not just passive support, but active support, engaging with our communities, engaging with our content, talking with us and our players. That's why we're here. And without you, none of this would be possible.
Well, I do want to thank you so much for coming into the studio today. Hopefully you all enjoyed this as well. You can check out the rest of our coverage of all things esports here at Yahoo Esports.